When people read and interpret this passage, they tend to overemphasize verse 6, in which Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And this verse is often wielded as a weapon to condemn not only non-Christians to an eternity in hell, but many Christians often interpret this verse in ways that condemn other Christians who are part of different denominations or churches. This verse has been abused and twisted in ways to endorse death-dealing theologies that have justified colonization and genocide of whole countries and continents, and it has been used to justify the silencing and oppression of Jewish people, atheists, agnostics, Muslims, and anyone who doesn't adhere to a narrow form of Christianity. So, how do we interpret this passage? What's an alternative? It's important to remember that biblical interpretation is a complex interplay of understanding the historical context of the passage, understanding the passage in reference to the other books in the Bible, language, which differs from ours, and also the reality that our current social, political, and theological realities influence how we read the text. When it comes to John 14, it is important to understand that the author's community was struggling not only with what death and resurrection of their Savior meant, but with inter-community squabbles that eventually led to the Jesus followers becoming a separate religion from Judaism. This passage isn't about individual adherence to a set of theological and political ideas that the early Jesus followers did not adhere to and didn't because they didn't exist, but is a word of comfort and challenge for a collective that was struggling with the despair and loneliness of being separated from the synagogue and living in a society under Roman oppression. For Christians living in the 21st century, there are a lot of differences. Christianity is an empire religion. So we're no longer a small, persecuted minority, at least not in the West. And yet, this passage can still serve as a comfort and a challenge, because in the 21st century, Christians are also called to stand up against systems of death and oppression. And standing up to these forces of death and destruction are difficult. But this passage reminds us that as Jesus followers, we aren't alone. Following the path of Jesus is not one of condemning other people to hell just because they disagree with us, but it is one of standing up against systems of death and destruction.